Have you ever experienced a sudden, inexplicable shift in your life, feeling like you've been singled out for attack? You're walking in faith, living your life with integrity, yet an invisible storm is brewing, directed solely at you. It feels like every good step you try to take is met with a massive, unseen resistance. A dark force trying to trip you up, silence your voice, and steal the joy right out of your heart. This isn't just a rough patch or a streak of bad fortune. This is the unmistakable, tangible reality of a spiritual war. And the fact that you can sense this battle, that you feel the pressure of the enemy, is actually the highest confirmation you could ever receive. It confirms that you are not ordinary. You are chosen, marked, and set apart by the Almighty Himself. When an adversary decides to target a child of God, they're not just harassing a person. They are foolishly declaring war on the very Creator of the universe. They cross a line that is ancient, sacred, and absolutely fatal to their own peace. The divine declaration echoes through time like a massive, unshakable gong in Psalm 105:15. Do not touch my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm. When that divine instruction is recklessly ignored, what happens next is not chaos, but the perfect, terrifying execution of holy justice. It's a sequence of events so precise and powerful that the forces of darkness watch in horror. Because when God stands to defend His precious ones, He doesn't need to politely clear His throat. He releases an earth-shaking roar. Every single weapon, every single lie, and every trap that is deployed against you becomes the mechanism for their own swift and sure downfall. Each curse they speak is transformed into a boomerang that rips apart their own stability. Every pit they meticulously dig for you becomes the very grave they stumble into themselves. Understand this. What is happening is not some low-level vendetta or personal revenge. This is pure, unstoppable divine justice being deployed on your behalf. And today, we are going to look behind the veil to witness the 9 inescapable consequences God brings upon those who dare to harm His warriors. 9 relentless waves of holy correction that prove one glorious, foundational truth. No one, and I mean no one, fights against God and wins. I urge you to stay with this message until the final moment, because the ultimate revelation you're about to hear will not just encourage your heart, it will completely reframe your entire understanding of your own divine position. You are untouchable, unbreakable, and perfectly protected by the highest power in existence. If you can already feel the powerful, comforting presence of the Holy Spirit stirring within your heart right now as you take in these words, then I want you to pause and take a quick moment. Like this message right now, so this incredible revelation can quickly reach another chosen vessel who desperately needs to be reminded of who is on their side. And if you have not yet joined this community, subscribe immediately, because every piece of revelation shared here is designed to be a piece of supernatural armor for the difficult days that lie ahead. Finally, as a profound act of spiritual declaration, I want you to type 99 in the comments below. This is more than just a random number. It is a powerful symbol. The number 9 represents divine completion and the final harvest. When you type it twice, you are forcefully declaring to the spiritual realm that God will finish what He started in my life, and He will do it with double the blessing and double the finality. Now let's begin with the first strike, a blow that is completely invisible to the human eye, yet absolutely devastating to the enemy. When someone wounds an anointed one, God doesn't start with physical catastrophe. He begins in the deep, silent architecture of the mind. The mental peace that once allowed them to confidently sleep like a baby is suddenly and dramatically turned against them. The sharp, arrogant confidence they once possessed morphs into loud, relentless, and paralyzing chaos. They find themselves abruptly waking up in the darkest hour of the night, at 3 a.m., their heart pounding for an unknown, terrifying reason. They become haunted, replaying conversations in their heads and constantly sensing unseen, judgmental eyes, watching their every move. A soft, relentless whisper begins to echo from the deepest part of their soul. You have targeted the wrong one. This process is swift and irreversible. Their arrogance quickly curdles into profound, debilitating anxiety. The easy, confident smiles they once wore become little more than terrified, forced masks. Even in moments that should bring joy, their conscience begins to shiver and tremble. God doesn't need to scream down from the heavens to enact justice. He simply allows the immense weight of their own guilt to do all the talking. And this guilt, once activated, does not just quietly fade away. It multiplies exponentially. Their very own mind becomes their absolute worst enemy, replaying their every act of cruelty like an inescapable, broken record that will never stop spinning. When they look into a mirror, all they see is a frantic, hollow look of fear reflected back at them. Every sudden noise feels like a clear, direct warning, and every moment of silence feels like the quiet setting of a verdict. The Spirit of the Lord begins to violently stir the waters of their heart, much like he did in the dark story of Pharaoh. They become tormented, profoundly restless, and utterly incapable of finding lasting peace. While you, the chosen one, are resting in the protective shadow of the Almighty, your attacker is now relentlessly hunted by the exact spiritual forces they tried to release against you. God will never permit his anointed servant to carry the spiritual torment that rightfully belongs to the one who is truly guilty. This initial mental unraveling is only the first step, because once the mind breaks, their tangible, physical reality is next to crumble. Once the mind collapses into chaos, the world around them immediately begins to perfectly mirror the absolute turmoil within. The smooth, clear path they once followed suddenly begins to violently fracture and break apart beneath their feet. Every single thing they confidently put their hands to immediately starts to fall apart. Their carefully laid plans crumble into dust. Their money seems to vanish without a trace. Their supposed allies inexplicably disappear. Doors that were once wide open to them now slam shut without a single logical explanation. They may dismiss all of this as nothing more than a run of bad luck, but there is absolutely nothing random about this divine disruption. God himself begins to aggressively rewrite their script, masterfully turning every single move they attempt into a suffocating, inescapable dead end. He permits a thick, suffocating fog of confusion to settle over all their plans, like a dense mist descending upon a battlefield. One moment they are bursting with self-assurance, and the very next they are hopelessly lost in an immense maze of their own making. Deals that they thought were absolutely guaranteed and signed suddenly fall through at the final, critical second. A crucial message they were supposed to send never reaches its vital destination. Every frantic attempt they make to gain altitude or rise above their circumstances ends in profound frustration, as if a set of unseen, powerful hands is constantly rearranging and thwarting their every step, which is exactly what is happening. Heaven is actively working to meticulously root out every potential outcome that was specifically designed to harm you. The incredible irony is that they remain completely blind to it. They curse the bad timing, the unexplained delays, and the people around them, never once realizing that the true force aggressively working against them is divine order itself. When a person foolishly sets out to utterly destroy one of the chosen, the entire universe, from the smallest detail to the grandest scale, immediately becomes a massive, immovable obstacle to their purpose. Reality itself bends and warps in the powerful defense of the Anointed One. Time begins to actively work against them. Their hours feel drastically shorter, their personal energy drains faster than ever, and their physical strength fades away. What they once built with such overweening pride now systematically betrays them, piece by painstaking piece. God will even utilize the smallest, most insignificant things, a broken laptop, a key-lost document, a sudden missed flight, to completely derail any action that was ever intended to harm you. Because when heaven intervenes, no dark, sinister plan can ever stand. Every single step they take only leads them deeper into the terrifying maw of divine resistance. And then, the quiet, unseen unraveling becomes completely and painfully visible to the world. The massive collapse begins in earnest. What once seemed so incredibly tall and utterly unshakable begins to spectacularly crumble from the inside out. It happens quietly at first, but then, without warning, it all breaks loose at once. The prestigious positions they constantly bragged about, the wealth they virtually worshipped, the vast influence they skillfully built through manipulation, all of it begins to rapidly decay under the immense weight of divine judgment. This doesn't happen with loud public explosions or sudden dramatic events. It's much slower, more agonizing, and exquisitely poetic. Every single brick they stacked upon a foundation of deceit becomes a profound, chilling reminder of how desperately fragile human glory truly is when it dares to stand against the authority of God. Just like the biblical story of Haman, who ironically built his own gallows, they have, with their own hands, designed the very mechanism of their downfall. The exact public stage they painstakingly constructed to publicly humiliate you becomes the very altar of their own spectacular exposure. God intentionally lets them rise just high enough so that the final devastating crash will loudly echo for all to hear. People immediately start noticing something strange. Something is deeply off. They begin to whisper in hushed tones. The once confident voice that effortlessly commanded entire rooms now noticeably trembles when they speak. The blinding spotlight turns incredibly cold and harsh. Their name, once associated with praise and envy, now carries the distinct taste of public unease. Every single lie they have ever told begins its slow, steady return, like a terrifying echo chasing them down an empty, haunted hallway. Finances that once seemed utterly untouchable suddenly dry up completely overnight. Opportunities they were absolutely sure were theirs instantly vanish. The influential connections they heavily leaned on start to silently crumble and sever. It is not coincidence. It is the ultimate consequence. Because when you try to build your life upon stolen peace and the pain of others, your foundation inevitably rots beneath you. Then comes the profound, suffocating silence, the kind of stillness that doesn't just fill an empty room, but seems to instantly swallow every trace of hope and light in it. Those who once flocked to surround them, the shallow friends who loudly cheered them on, the opportunistic allies who applauded their every move, begin to inexplicably vanish, one by one. There are no loud betrayals, no angry arguments, and no visible immediate reasons for the departure. Just an overwhelming, chilling distance. Text messages go unanswered. Invitations completely stop coming. Phone calls instantly go cold. It is as if a powerful, unseen hand is actively separating them from everyone and everything they once leaned on. And that, in fact, is precisely what is occurring. Divine isolation. When a person ignorantly lifts their hand against a chosen one, God simultaneously lifts his precious hand of favor away from them. Suddenly, their manipulative charm no longer works its magic. Their false influence rapidly fades away. Even the people who cannot comprehend the spiritual world feel a quiet, urgent whisper in their spirit that says, "Get away from that person." This is no accident or coincidence. It is divine protection in reverse. The same mighty God who faithfully surrounds his chosen with legions of powerful angels now surrounds their attackers with profound, soul-crushing emptiness. Like the biblical King Saul, who once confidently commanded great armies and cheering crowds, they now find themselves standing completely alone, relentlessly haunted by the hollow echoes of laughter that used to follow them wherever they went. Their massive pride, which was once constantly fed by the eager attention of others, now starves in the terrifying silence. The tables have turned completely, radically. Those who once mocked and judged your quiet solitude are now being completely crushed by their own unbearable isolation. Isolation in this context is not the punishment itself. It is the perfect revealing mirror. It forces them to see exactly who they truly are. Without the constant applause, without their desperate followers, without the illusion of power, they look around and realize that there is no one left to validate their lies or fuel their blinding arrogance. Even their own reflection in the glass feels utterly foreign to them. This is the precise moment when true fear begins its relentless whispering campaign, because they finally begin to sense what they have violently denied all along. Now, the completely unseen battle that they foolishly started in the spiritual realm begins to loudly and visibly echo through their physical body. What started as mere anxiety and guilt begins to visibly take form in their flesh and bone. They wake up every day feeling utterly exhausted, their energy completely drained before the day has even properly begun. No conventional medicine seems to work. No human doctor can offer a complete explanation. The clinical tests all come back normal, yet their body innately knows the absolute truth. It is carrying a spiritual sickness. The immense weight of their open rebellion is simply too heavy, And the fragile human frame was never designed to carry a burden that only true and humble repentance can lift. The very hand that faithfully upholds the righteous now silently and steadily presses upon them, like an overwhelming force of gravity descending directly from heaven itself. Psalm 32:4 states, "Your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer." That is the exact crushing reality of their experience. Their personal strength completely dries up. Their skin loses its vibrant, natural glow. Their eyes lose their fire and sparkle. Their easy smile fades into a hollow, exhausting performance. This is far more than just simple fatigue. It is divine exhaustion, because when you choose to fight against the chosen, you are fighting directly against the mighty, unstoppable current of God's perfect will. And absolutely no mortal can successfully swim against that tide for any length of time. The sickness may be entirely invisible to the world around them, but heaven instantly recognizes it as the clear mark of judgment, a spiritual fever that powerfully burns the soul from the inside out. They may desperately attempt to hide it behind heavy makeup, boastful success, or forced loud optimism, but their body betrays them every time. They suffer from profound headaches, crippling insomnia, sudden sharp pains, and a racing, erratic heart. These are symptoms with absolutely no explanation, because the battle they are fighting is fundamentally not of this world. Their fragile human body becomes the ultimate canvas of divine justice, painting the painful consequences in their trembling hands and their sleepless, terrifying nights. And as this crippling weakness grows, they begin to sense something far more terrifying than any illness. Then comes the monumental, final moment that no human ego can possibly survive: the complete and utter breaking of their pride. This is the moment when God steps out of the spiritual shadows and directly confronts their monumental arrogance head-on. Everything they once so loudly flaunted begins to rapidly vanish. The money they constantly bragged about is suddenly gone. The shallow admiration they so desperately fed on is now silent. The image they built like a massive, glorious monument to themselves is brutally and completely shattered. This massive fall is not random. It is surgical in its precision. Heaven does not humiliate people out of simple cruelty, but only to reveal truth in its rawest, purest form. What once elevated them now becomes the very weapon that forcefully brings them crashing down. Their public platform is instantly transformed into a terrifying stage of exposure. Their fame is converted into a merciless mirror of their shame. Just like the biblical Nebuchadnezzar, who was reduced to crawling in the fields stripped of his crown, they too are reduced to dust until they can finally see, with perfect clarity, who truly reigns supreme above all. God doesn't destroy their true identity. He brilliantly dismantles their illusion. He allows the very crowds that once cheered them to now watch in profound silence as the mighty quickly become fragile, and as the arrogant become truly desperate. There is something deeply haunting and poetic about divine justice. It never has to shout or make noise. It simply reveals, and revelation is the ultimate inescapable enemy of pride. When the desperate masks finally fall, so does their power to manipulate and deceive. They once viciously mocked your quiet humility, calling your simple faith nothing but a weakness. Now, in their agony, they deeply envy the powerful peace that true humility automatically brings. While they spectacularly crumble under the unbearable weight of their sudden exposure, you quietly rise, gracefully wrapped in divine favor and grace. Their new tears are no longer of self-pity or anger, but of a terrifying, clear-eyed recognition. They finally see, too late, that the power they tried to claim was absolutely never theirs to begin with. And now the law of heaven violently takes effect. The unstoppable, bitter harvest begins. Every malicious word they spoke in secret, every bitter curse they whispered in envy, every single trap they meticulously built in the deep darkness, all of it immediately begins its perfect, inevitable return journey. The exact chaos they released into the world starts quickly circling back with unbelievable divine precision. The energy of their hate doesn't just disappear. It multiplies exponentially. Every rumor, every lie, and every manipulation they aim to destroy you with becomes the very brutal storm that completely floods their own house. The arrows they shot at your peace bend violently mid-air and return to them with supernatural accuracy. Nothing is ever lost or forgotten in the mighty realm of justice. Heaven keeps a meticulously accurate record of everything. They arrogantly called their schemes strategy. God accurately calls it sowing. And now they are painfully forced to eat the sour, bitter fruit of their own self-created chaos. Betrayal comes violently knocking, not from you, but from those they once foolishly trusted. The very confusion they tried to plant in your path now brutally chokes out their own. The lies they used to momentarily elevate themselves become the very unbreakable chains that violently pull them down. They are forced to feel exactly what they once loudly celebrated: the sharp sting of rejection, the dull ache of being totally misunderstood, and the profound, terrifying silence of their unanswered prayers. The spiritual curse does not just return to them. It returns educated, stronger, and perfectly aware of its specific target. And as it violently lands, it instantly exposes the undeniable truth. God never, ever forgot. This is not some random event. It is consequence perfectly written in spiritual eternal law. Whatever a person sows, they shall also reap. They didn't just fight you. They brazenly fought heaven's absolute unchangeable order. And heaven simply never ever loses. The inevitable boomerang effect is utterly brutal. Not because God is cruel or vindictive, but because he is perfectly, universally consistent. His justice never rushes. It patiently waits for the absolute perfect moment when the reaping will hurt just enough to fully educate and teach. And then, the internal light goes completely out. There is no accompanying thunder, no visible fire, just a deep, chilling stillness that feels infinitely heavier than any storm. This is the precise moment when the sacred spiritual cord snaps, the moment when God's comforting presence quietly and fully withdraws. At first, they don't even seem to notice the difference. They keep desperately talking, keep loudly planning, and keep frantically pretending that everything is perfectly fine. But slowly something fundamental shifts inside. The spontaneous peace that used to follow them is simply gone. The unearned favor that once made doors fly open now makes them violently slam shut. They pray with desperation, but heaven remains profoundly silent. They speak with false confidence, but their words fall back on them like empty echoes in a hollow, empty room. The same intense divine warmth that once surrounded them now feels like a cold, heavy air relentlessly pressing against their very soul. This isn't an active, angry punishment. It is merely an absence. Kabod, the glory has completely departed. Every single blessing they ever possessed, the surprising success, the easy applause, the sudden opportunities, was, in truth, pure mercy, not mastery. And now that this mercy has been fully lifted, their joy instantly turns to confusion, and their confidence quickly turns to pure, raw panic. They desperately reach for the very presence they so foolishly mocked, and they find nothing left but the terrifying memory of it. Just like the biblical Saul, who cried out desperately for a single word from heaven that never, ever came, they begin to realize the most terrifying truth of all. The absolute silence of God is not an act of emptiness. It is the ultimate judgment. To lose his voice is to lose all direction. To lose his favor is to lose their very identity. Even their own reflection in the mirror feels completely unfamiliar, because the beautiful, illuminating light that once shone upon it has been completely and permanently extinguished. What used to bring them comfort now brings only profound dread. They sense with chilling certainty that something profoundly holy has stepped away forever, and in its awful place comes an empty, suffocating void that absolutely no worldly achievement can ever hope to fill. This is where the spiritual disconnection becomes completely unbearable, not primarily because of pain, but because of the crushing weight of emptiness. The world keeps spinning, but they no longer feel any meaningful part of it. The powerful divine current that once carried them has completely left, and now every single step feels forced, heavy, and ultimately meaningless. And then, the supreme court of heaven solemnly opens. Everything pauses, time, breath, destiny itself, as the final, eternal verdict is loudly read. This is the climatic moment where justice stops being hidden and becomes completely, radically undeniable. The entire war they foolishly believed was against you is now finally revealed for what it truly was: an open, brazen rebellion against the glorious throne of the Almighty. Every single insult, every vicious plot, every secret word of consuming hate was never aimed just at you. It was fired directly at God himself, and when God stands to passionately defend his own, the outcome is already perfectly written. The supreme judge of all creation declares with finality, "This far and absolutely no further." From that single powerful moment, the spiritual war is completely and irrevocably over. Their malicious words instantly lose all weight. Their petty curses completely lose their aim. Their dark plans fold completely in on themselves like dry paper catching fire. God does not need to fight loudly. His profound, deafening silence instantly becomes the sentence. His undeniable presence becomes the perfect execution. Suddenly, everything they desperately tried to weaponize against you mysteriously transforms into the very ladder that lifts you higher. Their vicious betrayal becomes your ultimate promotion. Their shallow rejection becomes your perfect redirection. The very same storm that tried to completely drown you now gracefully carries you toward your grand purpose, and heaven intently watches as the tables turn with incredible surgical precision. Divine justice never arrives too early or too late. It arrives perfectly. You, the chosen one, are vindicated, not with the fleeting sound of human applause, but with a deep, profound, and unshakable peace. You begin to realize with crystal clarity that all along you were never truly the victim. You were the magnificent evidence that God still passionately defends the pure in heart, and that his mighty covenant still stands perfectly unbroken. Your patient endurance became your powerful testimony. Your quiet silence became your unexpected weapon, and your ultimate survival became their final, inescapable sentence. When God rises to defend his chosen, every demonic contract instantly dissolves, every false, shallow alliance is brutally broken, and every shadow is forcefully dragged out into the blazing light. The verdict is eternal and absolute. Touch not my anointed. What they foolishly meant for immense harm has now become the unshakable foundation of your dramatic ascension. Therefore, do not spend another second looking back, because as you gracefully rise, their chapter is violently and permanently closed. The gavel has fallen, the final verdict is absolutely sealed, and heaven whispers one last powerful, life-altering truth into your soul.